Welcome to the RFP Success Show with host Lisa Rehurik, the #1 sought-after authority on RFP success. Each week, we bring you information, strategies, or resources to help you win more business through RFPs and have a little fun doing it. Let's get this week's episode started.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the RFP Success Show. I am your host, Lisa Rehurik, founder and CEO of the RFP Success Company. Today, we have Ama Cobbina. She's a graphics specialist, and it's kind of cool. We've had some graphics folks on the show before, but everyone brings a different perspective, and graphics and visuals are so important. And Ama and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and she had some really great points that are very different from what we've talked about before. So you definitely want to tune in and listen to this wonderful interview. So Ama, welcome.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
Absolutely. Well, let's kick it off by having you tell us a little bit about your background and what it is that you do now.
Okay. Well, I am originally from Ghana in West Africa, and my tertiary education was from the University of Virginia, where I went to the School of Architecture there. So the plan all along was to become an architect.
Nice.
Yes. But I graduated in 2007. So it was a really tough time to graduate as an international student in the country. Yes. And having to go through the process of documentation in order to become a working member of the society, and not to mention the recession at that point. So I took the transferable skills that I had in studio, sort of visualizing my ideas, my concepts, and basically making it a marketable skill, which is really nice because I learned software like Adobe Illustrator. I started off with PageMaker before it became InDesign. I did Photoshop even before that in high school, where I went to high school in Accra, Ghana. So I've always been a visual thinker in the sense that I understand the language and I recognize that it's there. And I see its uses and I like to play with it. So in that sense, that's what makes me a graphic specialist. And just doing proposals within that realm is focused, which is really great for me because it brings in that technical side, which I have from architecture. And it allows me to really hone in a message that is sales focused, that is personal at the same time, because whenever you're putting together a proposal, you're talking to your reviewers, and then also sort of broad enough to reach your client as a whole to leave a good impression so that, that continues business. So it's a lot of things to focus on, both for text and graphics. And I love it. I love the challenge of it. I love proposal development as sort of this, to use agile terminology, like this sprint or this scrum. You're just all there, you're focused, you need to get it all done. Everybody knows the deadline, and we're all just scurrying around, and then all of a sudden we have this artifact. And I love being a part of that process.
I love that perspective too, because a lot of times people that are doing proposals are like, I hate them. I meet a lot of people, if they're not really a dedicated proposal person, which I do work with a lot of just companies that respond to RFPs, but they're not necessarily the proposal person or dedicated. I tell them what I do and they roll their eyes and they're like, oh my God, I hate RFPs. So it's always refreshing to meet somebody that loves them as much as I do. And I can hear your passion. And I also love how you totally reinvented yourself. It was like, hey, this isn't going to work right now. I got to find something that does. And you just found something new. That is brilliant.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's really hard being 21, so ready to take on the world, have your portfolio and you're interviewing and people are excited about your ideas, but the numbers just don't work for them to hire you. And, it's just gotten to that point, or it had been at that point where people were that honest. I interviewed with RTKL in LA. And the gentleman was so wonderful and so kind to me, and he was totally blown away by my portfolio. And we had this fantastic discussion, and it hurt him so much to have to tell me, look, we just don't have the numbers to hire you, but, we would love to have you. But, that was just the reality of the situation, and you kind of have to keep going,
Yeah. Yep.
I was so excited and so happy to be in LA, to be in around so much creativity in so many media forms, and that's the thing that I feel as if it's lacking, especially for me in graphic specialization for federal government work, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're very insulated. We read our RFPs, we look at Section L, we follow Section L.
Right.
We are following everything to the T to make it really easy and really simple for the reviewers to get our message and to love our solution. But we forget that there is such a huge world of visual communication out there, and we get stuck in the rut of reusing the same sort of infographics that are very old. They look very dated.
And they're no
don't
longer relevant,
inspire.
or they're not
And
relevant to that
yeah,
particular proposal. Yeah.
exactly. Or even to the industry and the solutions that are available.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and this is such, I always, to me, visuals are
Mhm.
something that people really take for granted in proposals. So why do you think, what's your viewpoint on why visuals are important in RFPs?
I think that we allow ourselves to think of visuals as just some checkbox that we have to tick, right? We have to make sure we
Yes.
break up the text. That is always the request that I come up with or I get faced with. And that is fine. That has its place. We all know that your eye needs to rest when you're reading a lot of
Right.
text, but we're missing the opportunity to really look at it as part of the content, which it is.
Yeah.
And when we have time to rest our brains and not be stressed out by the process, we recognize that, and we recognize that as best practice. You see it in the APMP Book of Knowledge. You see it everywhere. Everybody knows that you need to be able to visualize something in
Yep.
order for you to understand it. But when we get into the muscle movements, the habits of a proposal process, and in that template that we use in our minds, visuals and graphics is like at the very end. Gold
Right.
team is coming or red team is coming, and you're like, you gotta
Like,
have so
what?
much text. I should just throw in something. And then you totally miss the opportunity to
Yeah.
with your reviewers, with your clients, even with your internal organization in understanding your solution so that your visual becomes an artifact that can move on and affect your presentation to your client. It can affect other marketing pieces and collateral that you use to sell your business. It can become a talking point at industry days.
Yes.
Which a lot of times it becomes. I have heard several times, people saying, hey, that graphic that you used to explain that process or that
Oh,
ConOps is perfect. That is exactly what we want. And then it shows up again in proposals and again in proposals until, it loses its shelf life.
right. I like that.
Yeah. But, people miss that opportunity. And for
Yeah.
somebody who's passionate about it, like myself, it can be very disheartening. But at the same time, it's a language where it's impactful at every single opportunity it's given.
It's
So,
true. I mean, I
yes,
always say if I'm reading something or if I'm, listening to a presentation, if it's all text and they're just talking, I'll zone out. Even reading, I'll zone out. But that
yes.
visual kind of brings you back in, especially when it's that good visual that tells the right story, that's impactful, that gives the right info. What do you think is the biggest mistake people make when using visuals for RFPs?
Reusing those visuals and
Mm,
not having a discussion about them.
always. I see that all the time.
Oh, yeah, just changing the text or changing the client name without having a discussion. Or even worse, skipping the entire storyboarding process.
Oh, so let's talk about that a minute, right? Because tell our listeners, what do you mean? Because there will be some listeners that are like, I don't even know what you mean by storyboarding. So can you tell us what
Definitely.
that means?
So storyboarding is, I believe the roots are more in the film industry,
Okay.
but it's also any creative's roadmap. So for a lot of graphic designers, it'll be wireframing, or web developers, it'll be wireframing. Or even if you're a writer, it'll be outlining. So
That's a
it's
great analogy.
exactly. So it's your visual outline. You can literally just sketch out your entire proposal. Not with anything complicated. You don't need to draw figures. You don't need to be Da Vinci. You can just simply use text in boxes and circles so that you can have a way to move from one phase of your story to another. And you're answering the question, who is doing what, when, and why, and how.
Okay. And isn't it true too that part of that is what are the main messages that you want the client to walk away with?
Exactly.
Yep.
You
Okay.
can hone in on your theses. On you can hone in on your several focus points, or if you have an RFP that has focus points outlined for you already,
Yes.
whatever happens, you can find truly compelling things to support that without just a focus point is, let's say, a tight 60-90 day transition. That's all well and good. That's a focus point for the customer. So it's more like, can you do that? So you need to be able to answer it with something that's compelling, that goes beyond, oh yeah, we can do it before and we've done it before in the past. And if you refer to our past performance, it's an opportunity,
Well,
basically.
and huge opportunity because what you just said, that's all really boring and everybody else is doing that. So it's
Yeah.
not setting you apart, right? It's just, it's telling them, and I always tell my clients, like, do you want them to feel that, yeah, they could probably do this? Or do you want them to say, that is the company that we need and want for this solution?
Exactly.
Right?
People should really think about it like when you go out and you want to buy something, right? You have put together the money, you've thought about it, you've narrowed down your field. Let's say you need a suit. So you go to Men's Warehouse and you might hit up Macy's and go somewhere else. But the entire time you are looking for quality, right? You're looking for something that's going to be at your dollar. You're going to look for it to be comfortable and you're going to look for it to feel right and to fit right. So if, none of those stores are making any compelling suggestions for you for suits, they're not giving you options for color, they're not giving you options for material, they're not giving you options for fit, you will obviously just pick the cheapest.
Right.
Right?
Oh,
But
that's a really great analogy, right? That's where maybe price comes into play. Yep.
yeah, and that's kind of where we all are. So as the federal government and as just consumers in general become more knowledgeable about what they can get from industry and other consumers, you know, we have to be more compelling in our stories. Otherwise, we just don't compete at that level.
Yes. Yes.
Just
I
don't.
love that. That's so great. So you have gotten creative over the years when you and I talked about getting people to strategize about visuals and providing incentives for them to strategize or just, creative ways to get them to take that seriously. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, one of them is really just becoming redefining my position, especially my current position, moving from a graphic specialist, which, everybody sees mostly as a support role.
Right.
They hand me something on a napkin or in PowerPoint and I make it look pretty.
Yeah, make it look pretty. That's all you do, right? Yeah.
which is fine, which is great at all. But what I've started challenging people to do is write me a caption.
Mm,
What does that mean? You are in the process of writing anyway, so why don't
right.
you do that? And that really helps to focus people because we all understand what captions mean and what they do for us in our day to day.
So
So,
you're saying like write a caption of like here's what you want it to say and then you'll take that and run with it. Is that the
no, basically describe it, right? So, a good
Yep.
caption tells you what you're looking at and why it's important.
Okay. So
And
instead of giving you a hand drawing, just give you the caption and then
you
you'll
can just
take
give me
it.
a caption.
Okay.
Yeah. Or call me and let's have a description.
Right.
What would be fantastic would be somebody giving me a scribble and a caption.
Nice.
Because that paints the entire visual story for me.
Yep.
And then the rest of it is for me to ask questions, for me to actually produce and use the skills that I have in Illustrator and in whatever platform that you use with that skill set. What I'm trying to do is brush up on my doodling skills so
Oh,
that I
nice.
can offer that as a service to my group. So you're having your meeting and people are talking process and nobody is writing down any large format notes for anybody to look at. So, I mean, there's a whole group of people out there that do graphic facilitation globally for people to visualize their ideas and their solutions. So I'm brushing up on that as a visual thinker. I'm always reminding people that you are always thinking visually. Your text and alphabet are symbols and visuals. That is how we function every day. So when you say to yourself, you know what, I'm not a good drawer, I can't visualize this, or like that is not true. You need to think of yourself as, okay, I know how to speak this language, but what exactly am I trying to say?
But a lot of people struggle with that even, right?
Yeah.
Like they really, I mean, and again, in the context of an RFP where it's like not about us, those of us writing it, it's about what the person reading it is going to take away from that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that struggle with that for sure.
Definitely. And the last thing is really find really good tools to help you move past that idea that you can't draw. So there are a ton of tools. You don't need to learn how to draw. You need to be able to express that idea, right?
Yep.
So, shout out to Build a Graphic.
Yes.
They are a fantastic resource.
Yep. And Mike's been on the show before.
Exactly. Mike is fantastic. His energy is great.
Yes.
So great. And, he has created an add-in that has totally inspired me to make those conversations and to give those incentives for people to be able to get something visual quickly and then have that discussion afterwards, because that's where all the magic is. That discussion afterwards. Because you can really say, okay, the solution makes no sense. Or it's great.
Well, and what's kind of cool too, like, what's interesting is that, when I was working in RFPs, I never really thought twice about visuals much. And I also thought of graphics people as support. Here, I have to give you exactly what I want, and then you go make it pretty, just like you said earlier, right? But it's so interesting how much more it is than that. So for everybody listening, your graphics team or your graphics outsourced company, whoever you use, can help you conceptualize that. They should be involved in those discussions. It's not just about, here, hand me everything and then I go do my thing, right? Isn't it better for you to be involved right up front in those conversations?
Oh, yeah. It is way more important to take care of the legalities and all of that and get those people involved really quickly, because they are another part of the arsenal of tools that we have as proposal developers. They can understand the solution, they can understand the business decisions, and they can represent them just as that. And they can give you clarity and focus even before you start writing. Heck, even at Blue Team.
Yes. Yes. And Blue Team is right up front. That's the strategy conversation.
That is the strategy conversation, exactly. And they need to be there to create an artifact, if for nothing else, to create an artifact, a drawing, a graphic of some sort that records that discussion, points out the holes, and allows there to be further discussion to build the solution that you're trying to sell to your clients and your customers.
Nice. One of the things that you and I talked about on our phone call, which I was really excited about, was a visual inventory, right?
Yes.
So we work so hard on the content library, and we tend to not pay attention to the visual library. And I think, again, because a lot of us don't take visuals as seriously as we should. Tell me more about that. Tell us more about how to create a visual library.
First and foremost, I think it's important for people to understand that when you do create your content library, that visual library is just another drill down subset of it. And that's all in that thinking about the content of your proposal as two separate things, your text and your visuals.
Ah, okay, good.
They are one and the same. So if you want to be able to search for something in your management approach, right? You want to be able to go to your content library, do a query, and come up with something. So if your
Yeah.
visuals in your content library are static, you can't search them, you can't drill down, you can't see history, then it's just useless information. It's static information that's giving you no value.
That's true.
So just like there's a push on asset management, on efficiency, on data, we have to look at ourselves and do the exact same thing. Really
Mm.
figure out how deep our data drives down and weave in that your visual documentation management system into your content library system. Because the nice thing about visuals is, right, you have your production file and you have your image file at the end of it. And you can have two different strategies because those files can get large and they can become cumbersome.
Mm.
But they also give you an outlook for how you can maintain your proposal content library. So what I'm working on is a way to automate that system for people
Nice.
to be able to request graphics for me to work on that graphics, send it back, and then that application takes that information, that completed image, and throws it in a repository. And that image has all the properties and metadata that we need to drill down. And it's not mind-blowing technology. It's not something that people are unable to do, even just with Microsoft Windows Explorer. Nobody thinks to add into the properties section for your files.
Yeah, so
But
this is all mind-blowing to me, who is not good at any of that stuff.
well, good. I'm so glad I blew your mind. But in the grand scheme of things, it really shows how sometimes we can get really stuck in our own ways and not
Yes.
be able to see those technologies or see things happening elsewhere and be like, well, I think we should do that, or we should try to do it.
Right, right. And I know for my clients, the ones that use like a RFP software or whatever, they probably are keeping those visuals separate. But I do have a lot of clients that don't use any sort of software and they just revert back to the prior RFP. Let's go back
Yes.
to this RFP. Or remember a couple years ago, we responded to this one and let's go pull that graphic out of that. And it's just better to turn it into that, put it in the repository where the content should be also, and help you just manage all of that better and have that bank of things to go and look at
Yeah.
and recall back to.
And I mean, if you want to take it a step further, you can just imagine how easy your storyboarding will be at that moment, right?
Mm,
You're sitting in Blue Team and people are talking about solutions that you've done before. You quickly look it up, hit print, stick it on the wall, scribble all over it.
yeah. Interesting. I like
It's
that.
it's all about bringing that information closer to you so that you can take the time away from, okay, we're in Blue Team. Somebody has remembered this graphic from somewhere. So somebody notes it down, usually the proposal manager.
Right.
You go find your graphic specialist and like, so this proposal from God knows when.
Yep.
So if you could sift through, the last three around this year and try to find something, or do you remember some curves, blocks, something?
Right.
Just, by the time I'm able to find that information, connect with whoever I need to get it back to you, I mean, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
Right. Right. And we all know that we don't have a lot of time. I mean,
No.
time is not generally a resource that we've got or
Mhm.
a luxury that we have when we're responding to RFPs. So what are some of your top tips for best practices around visuals?
Mm. Start early, like we've been saying, start early and do it often. Your pink team should be a visual exercise, I believe.
And
Because
define pink team. So not everybody that's listening knows all the federal lingo. So
oh
describe what the
yes.
pink team is.
So your pink team would be the outlined version of your proposal.
Perfect.
So it's translating the solutioning that you did in blue team, hopefully. Your BD is full steam, you know the clients, you know the hot button topics for the particular proposal, and you've discussed it in blue team, and your executives are moving to make some business decisions about the solution. And pink team They've made those decisions. Your solution is ready to take some form, mostly bulleted text.
Yep.
So that the rest of the proposal team is like, okay, we understand what we're doing, and this is how it's going to affect this and that and that, and then ultimately pricing and the entire tone and message of the proposal. So that's what you want to do for Pink Team. Get everybody on board. And Pink Team should be bullets and a whole bunch of graphics and visuals and scribbles and just mind storming stuff and brainstorming stuff, because you're going to take that and then you're going to build from there.
Love it.
And that is my number 2 tip. So start early. And number 2, Pink Team is a graphic exercise. And number 3, you have got to manage your assets. You've got to manage your files, your documents. You've got to take documentation seriously, and how you query that information and how your team is able to use that information is absolutely important. So I would say invest in the apps that you need to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's so funny how so many companies do not take documentation seriously. Even when they've got the software, they've got the apps that they need, and they still don't take it seriously. And they think of it as I should say leadership tends to think of it as I don't know if they think the little elves come in the middle of the night and do all of that. They forget that there's a function there that has to be take place.
Exactly. You have companies that you work for, and it's 30, 40 years of history, and nobody knows except for the one person or 2 people who've been there for 25 years and have heard the stories, and that can give you some sense of continuity only from their perspective.
Yep.
It's just, just as businesses, you can't really expect to be sustainable.
Yeah, it's so true. And as we're talking about kind of this repository and keeping track of your visuals, because you and I had this conversation as well, like copyright issues come into play.
Oh, yeah.
If you're using visuals that were not created internally for yourself. So how do you suggest people kind of manage, how do they manage copyright issues, and what advice do you have there around copyrights?
Well, just as you have a legal team for your proposals, you need to have somebody that specializes in it, or a consultant that can tell you, definitively the kind of images that you're using, because it's different for your industries and it's different for the things that you are doing as a business.
Yep.
But in general, as a graphic specialist, you know that even if you're using stock images, you have to read the licensing on the sites pretty thoroughly to understand how to use the images. So that's a graphic specialist skill set. Talking with your communications and your marketing groups for those larger companies that have, proposal graphics people that are just working on proposals, and then your marketing sections, because they will have those project photos that you want to use that should be approved by your customer, that should be easy to get. Apart from that, if you're developing solution graphics, your infographics, your process flow graphics, they are works of your own, so you can be good with that. But if you're trying to make your cover page and you want to use that image that you saw on Google, not a good idea.
And I see it all the time particularly with smaller businesses, but it's not always just smaller businesses. But yes, we have to be careful. And I would guess too, in storing that information and back to the repository, all of that information should be included in that, right?
Definitely. As much input as you can get from all the people that affect your business. So legal, marketing, comms, operations, for how to store that information. It's important. It's tedious, yes.
Tedious, but important. There is a lot of tedious stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. You, like I said, you want to be able to drill down. So if I do pull up a page from a proposal 5 years ago, click on the image, I should be able to have all that information. And, if you're using Adobe Bridge allows you to do that. Okay. Like I said, Windows Explorer allows you to add metadata and properties to all your files and all your file types,
Nice.
mostly. And once you figure out the kind of system and process flow that works best for your proposal team. And I'm not saying create another process and dump it on people. No,
Right.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
You want things that are in stride with what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to request a proposal, make sure you have an app that allows you to do that quickly, or you have an add-in that allows you to do that quickly. And like I said, automate your archiving. Outlook does it for your emails, so you can automate your archiving for your proposal graphics as well.
Nice.
Makes it you don't have to think about it. Then that little elf does show up.
Right. Well, and so that's the piece, right? We're talking about these things feeling tedious, but where would you rather have the tedious? Because the tedious is going to show up no matter what, right?
Oh, yeah.
So do you want it on the front end where you've got control of it, or do you want it in the middle of a deadline, or do you want it after the fact when you get a cease and desist from a lawyer or something because you've used the wrong graphic? So that tedious will show up somewhere. You just it's better when you control it, right?
Oh, yes, definitely.
So do you have either a success story or a horror story that you can share about how visuals impacted the outcome of an RFP that you've worked on?
Oh, man. So a success story for one that I wasn't involved in.
Okay.
A company that I was working for decided that they wanted to mind map at the beginning of the proposal. The stories that I've heard about this proposal, it just seems like the best process ever.
Nice.
And
it's a different way of storyboarding.
Exactly. It's just another way of doing that. And everybody has done, the scribbles, you draw the circle and then you link it to another idea, you link it to another idea. And so that's just simple way of visualizing everything from the get-go. And I've been told that writing was the easiest thing ever on that proposal.
Interesting.
And, I wasn't even involved. They came to tell me about this, especially when I start, soapboxing myself about visuals. But
well, they probably heard you. They were listening.
Yeah.
Right? They learned. That's fantastic.
Definitely. And the horror story is just, hey, so we need a graphic for the executive summary. Our whole team is a week.
No.
So what have you been writing about?
Yeah. I love it. Well, so how can people connect with you if they want to connect with you and just learn more about you? How can they do that?
Oh man, social media is the best way. LinkedIn, I try to keep the professional side on that platform.
Okay.
I do have personal handles which will all be made available, but LinkedIn is fantastic. I get messages all the time. I respond to people. I have it on my phone. It's probably the one that I'm on the most, especially when I'm in work mode.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, we will have her contact info, that LinkedIn link, in the show notes. So make sure you check that out and connect with her. I assume you're open to people connecting to you on LinkedIn.
Yes. It'll ask you how you know me and all, but it'll definitely just send me a message. Just send me a message. Yeah.
Perfect. Ama, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I greatly appreciate you being on the show and sharing your expertise with us.
Oh, no problem. It was super excited. And I've been super excited about it, and it was super exciting. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. You are so welcome. Well, everybody, you have been listening to the RFP Success Show. Thank you for tuning in, and we will be back again here next week.
You have been listening to the RFP Success Show with RFP expert Lisa Reherik, author of the RFP Success Book. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, make sure you click the subscribe button so you don't miss a show. And thanks for spending time with us today.